deputy ministers and senior government officials to spread across Ottawa, across departments and ministries, making the point that Alberta has been a massive contributor to Canadian jobs and prosperity, to social programs and social progress, and yet we are not getting a fair deal with the blockage of pipelines, with the lack of market access, with governments that have been working against our vital economic interests, even while we have been helping to fund their social programs. I'll be traveling there with Finance Minister Travis Toews, Environment and Parks Minister Jason Nixon, Energy Minister Sonia Savage, Labour and Immigration Minister Jason Copping, Agriculture and Forestry Minister Devin Dreeshen, Minister of Justice and Solicitor General Doug Schweitzer, Minister of Indigenous Relations Rick Wilson, and Minister of Children's Services Rebecca Schultz. We'll also be traveling with my Deputy Minister and the Secretary to Cabinet, Ray Gilmore, Deputy Minister for Intergovernmental Relations, Colleen Volk, Deputy Minister for Finance, Athana Metsalopoulos, Deputy Environment Minister Bev Yee, Deputy Energy Minister Sprague, Deputy Labour Minister McLeod, Deputy Agriculture and Forestry Minister Corbould, Associate DM for Justice Dennis Cooley, DM of Indigenous Relations Donovan Young, and Darlene Bozma, DM of Children's Services. We'll also be joined by Government Caucus Chair Todd Lowen. And on Monday at noon, I will be speaking to the Canadian Club, what I understand is a sold-out function, to bring Alberta's message of the fight for fairness right to the heart of Ottawa. We'll be hosting a reception for parliamentarians, deputy ministers, and key opinion leaders in Ottawa on Monday night. I will be meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau on Tuesday afternoon. My colleagues will be meeting with their counterparts, as will the deputy ministers traveling with us. We'll also be meeting with the Alberta Official Opposition Caucus, which is 33 of the 34 Alberta MPs. And I also believe I'm meeting with, I am meeting with NDP leader Singh, and I hope that the NDP Member of Parliament for Edmonton Strathcona. And there are a number of other meetings with senior officials. I'll be doing a series of interviews as well. Our government was elected on a commitment to focus on jobs, the economy, and pipelines, to make life better for Albertans and to stand up for this province, to fight for our vital interests. As you know, Prime Minister Trudeau said on the night of the federal election that, quotes, "To Alberta and Saskatchewan, I've heard your frustration and I want to be there to support you." Since then, he has appointed Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, with whom I had a constructive, nearly 3-hour meeting recently here in Edmonton, and appointed Jim Carr as envoy to the Prairie Provinces, with whom I have also spoken. We are pleased to see some initial progress today with the federal agreement on equivalency between on emitting greenhouse gas emissions from major industrial emitters. In other words, an equivalency for our technology innovation and emissions reduction plan. Obviously, we continue to have a fight with the federal government over the carbon tax, and that is why we continue to support our friends in Saskatchewan and Ontario in their Supreme Court appeals on their carbon tax references. And I understand that within a few weeks, the Alberta Appeal Court will be hearing arguments on our judicial reference challenging the constitutionality of the federal carbon tax. We believe, frankly, that we have a stronger case than Saskatchewan or Ontario because of how robust our TIER fund is. Our TIER program, we think, is a very detailed and credible plan for emissions reduction through the levy price that we are imposing here, and we therefore do not need the federal government to punish people for heating their homes and filling up their gas tanks. But there are many other issues, obviously, that we will be addressing. We will be focusing on what I've articulated as the priority, urgent, fair deal issues. First of all, pipelines. I will be asking Prime Minister Trudeau for a fixed date for the completion of the Trans Mountain expansion and a firm guarantee that the federal government will respect and enforce the rule of law. Ottawa has the tools to ensure that TMX is built, and our message is use those tools. We'll also be continuing conversations with the Government of Canada on a strategy to facilitate Aboriginal financial participation in the Trans Mountain Expansion project and other prospective major resource projects. Secondly, we will be following through from the momentum that we got at the Council of the Federation earlier this week by demanding that Alberta receive its full fiscal stabilization payment going back to 2014, which would represent $2.4 billion. And this should be done, as I say, retroactively. This is a request that was endorsed by all 13 provinces and territories on Monday in a remarkable expression of solidarity for this province. We'll also be continuing our demand for the repeal of Bill C-48 and the repeal of the No More Pipelines. C-48 is the tanker ban, and C-69, the No More Pipelines law, or at the very least, that the federal government go back to the drawing board and accept the amendments that had been adopted by the Senate and put forward by the government of Alberta, as well as the energy industry. Next, we will request help to get this economy going through financial instruments like flow-through shares to kickstart job-creating investment that could be expressed, for example, through accelerated application of carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration technology, or by helping to reclaim abandoned wells in Alberta that would put our oil and gas workers back to work, helping the environment. So those are some concrete ideas where Ottawa could actually help in the short term to create jobs and help the environment. Finally, we'll be seeking equivalency agreements. We got one today on the TIER program, but we'll be seeking equivalency agreements for methane regulations that are stronger and more cost-effective than the equivalent federal government regulations, as a recent study co-funded by the federal government confirmed. There are, of course, a number of other issues that my colleagues will be raising. I think we have actually several dozen issues altogether where we are asking for progress. I appreciate the Prime Minister's sentiment, saying that he will be there to support you, Saskatchewan and Alberta. I appreciate the appointment of Minister Freeland. But the message I will be carrying on behalf of Albertans to Ottawa next week is that we need to see action. And we are not seeking a special deal. We're seeking a fair deal. We contributed $600 billion to the rest of the country over the past decades net, and we contribute around $20 billion a year more to Ottawa than Albertans receive back in benefits or services. And if Ottawa and the rest of the country wants to continue to benefit from Alberta as the goose that's laid the golden egg in modern Canadian economic history, then Ottawa needs to unleash us to be able to develop our resources, get to global markets, get a fair price from them, and not tie us down with an endless number of new laws and regulations that inhibit our responsible resource sector. So I'm looking forward to, I think this is unprecedented. We are taking a third of the Alberta cabinet and a third of our deputy ministers to bring a very coordinated, full court press, fighting for Alberta's vital interests, fighting for jobs and the economy and for pipelines in this province. I'm happy to take your questions.
What do you think the chances are that the Prime Minister would lift this equalization cap and then maybe cut you a check for $2.4 billion?
Well, I can say that we've received initial indications that are give us grounds for hope that they may respond positively. Let me try to put that a little more succinctly. I think they have heard us. I think they've heard the Council of the Federation on this. I think they realize that we have been shortchanged. And I understand that Minister Morneau has indicated he's willing to discuss the fiscal stabilization program at a meeting of finance ministers to be held in Ottawa on December 14th. So we are hopeful, but we haven't had anything like an assurance, but we have had, let me just say, language that sounds like an openness to talk to us about this.
Even going back in...
Yeah, well, they've not excluded or this in preliminary conversations. We've just been told that they are prepared to talk about reform of the fiscal stabilization program with finance ministers on December 14th. And I hope that's a good faith opening to fix this problem.
Premier, in 2021, Ottawa, as far as we know, will require the heavy emissions carbon tax to go up to $40 per ton. What do you intend to do about that?
Well, we will oppose that measure because we think it will, if they continue raising the tax, it will make our economy less competitive. And here's the problem. It just, at some point, it continues to lead to the flight of capital and carbon leakage, basically from our energy sector to the energy sector in the U.S. that does not have a carbon price. So we don't think that helps global emissions, and it certainly hurts the Canadian economy. We'll continue to make that case, but we'll have to make a prudent judgment when we get closer to that date, because one thing we don't want is the federal government bigfooting into Alberta and enforcing their own separate regulatory regime. We have worked, because we have a lot of expertise in this province on technical issues around oil and gas production in particular, we've been able to work with the industry to bring in this levy with a minimum of disruption and by minimizing the costs to the industry. We are concerned that the federal government would not be as sensitive, and we think a federal levy on major emitters would be more painful economically. So we're very concerned about that. And what I'm trying to say is we need to protect our jurisdiction. Now, part of that, Rafi, is we're going to wait for the decision of the Alberta Appeal Court on the carbon tax generally and the Supreme Court. So by this time next year, I think we'll have a clearer sense of the constitutional dispute on this, the jurisdictional aspects of carbon taxes and major emitter levies. That will help to guide our strategy. So I guess I'm saying we'll oppose it, but I won't close the door to going to $40 if we have no choice except the imposition of a federal regulatory regime on Alberta.
Your job numbers are down, your reaction to that, and is Alberta where you expect it to be at this time?
Well, first of all, we're always disturbed to hear about any job losses in the economy, and I'm sorry for those who continue to struggle looking for work. I would point out that, and I've always expected to see variations in employment numbers, particularly during this period. We saw positive employment numbers in October and September, and we do see in today's report a significant increase in unemployment right across the country. I believe it's 71,000 jobs lost, according to StatsCan, in the month of November. So it's not a problem isolated to Alberta. It appears to be a national trend. I hope that Prime Minister Trudeau and his government will take this as an urgent reminder of the need to focus on economic growth and job creation and competitiveness. And it doesn't entirely surprised me. We took over an economy in Alberta here that I think was basically in recession, and that had gone through a 4-year job crisis. And I always knew we were not going to be able to turn that around overnight. Fundamentally, the problem here in Alberta continues to be market access. And I believe we're going to reach a turning point in 2020 in this regard. As you know, we've just seen the commissioning of the Canadian portion of Line 3, which adds 100,000 barrels of egress. Once CN has cleared through the backlog from that was created during their strike, I think we're going to see oil shipments almost double from about 300,000 barrels a day to 550,000 barrels, thanks in part to the special production allowances that our government recently authorized to increment additional crude ship by rail. And there will be a number of deblockages and optimization projects on various pipelines that should add another 100 to 200,000 barrels of egress. So this time next year, I'm confident, even before we get to the full commissioning of the Line 3 replacement, I'm confident that we will be up several 100,000 barrels of egress in our market. So we should not need curtailment. We should not need curtailment any longer. This time next year, we should be producing and shipping more oil than ever, and that should help incent additional investment. We have seen some positive signs this week. The announcement by CNRL that they are increasing their capital expenditure by $250 million to do, I think, 60 new exploratory wells in the conventional basin to create 1,000 jobs, and some other, this week as well, some new power projects being announced by Suncor and Capital Power and others. So we do see more capital spending coming in, which will create more jobs. All of the banks and economic think tanks project that Alberta will lead the country in economic growth next year. That is, I know that doesn't give much immediate help to people who are currently jobless, but hopefully it's a sign that things are turning around in Alberta.
Combien de temps est-ce que les Albertans vont devoir, sur ce sujet, excusez-moi, combien de temps est-ce que les Albertans vont devoir attendre avant de voir des résultats positifs sur l'économie, sur
Comme j'ai dit, on a vu une augmentation d'emplois en Alberta en septembre et octobre. Et aujourd'hui, nous voyons une vague de chômage dans tout le coin du pays. Ce n'est pas seulement Alberta. Cela étant dit, je crois que 2020 sera l'année où nous allons voir croissance économique et dans le marché de main-d'œuvre, la création d'emplois. Ça, c'est la prévision de tous les économistes que l'Alberta va mener le pays en croissance d'emplois et économique l'année prochaine. Et nous voyons une augmentation certainement des exportations de pétrole albertain pour plusieurs raisons l'année prochaine, et nous voyons une augmentation des investissements importants comme celle de Canadian Natural Resources et les autres. Sorry.
Yeah, Premier, I want to get your reaction to yesterday's throne speech. Do you think that it addressed Alberta's concerns with regards to pipeline access, et cetera, oil, that kind of stuff?
No, it clearly did not. I understand that the throne speech not only failed to mention Alberta and Saskatchewan, but failed to mention the oil and gas industry. I think there was one allusion to natural resources. And so I think that was somewhat disappointing. I don't want to overstate that, however, because throne speeches are vague general documents. I've been both in opposition and government, and I never think it's to go and parse every word in a general statement of intent is not very fruitful, I think. But what will be fruitful, hopefully, is a commitment to act on some of these commitments some of these issues when we meet Prime Minister Trudeau and his cabinet next week. So he committed on election night to be there to support you, Alberta and Saskatchewan. I wrote him a letter the next day indicating concrete ways in which the federal government could do so. There has been no action on those issues yet. Now, to be fair, they only swore in a cabinet last week, and they just had their throne speech. But my message will be, Prime Minister, if you want to help to heal the rift and strengthen both national unity and our economy, please take action on some of these items, and I hope we'll get a positive response.
We're going to go to the Rafi, can I get you to hang on? We'll go to the phones. Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
Question comes from Kelly Kreiderman of Globe and Mail. Your line is open.
Hi there, Premier. Thank you for taking the question. I wanted to ask whether it's really useful to go after a ratings agency like Moody's when they criticize some of the policies of the Alberta government and your strategy, your financial strategy and economic strategy.
Well, I was disappointed with their decision, but they have a right to obviously make independent decisions, and we respect that. I think their decision underscored that we are in a fiscal crisis, as Dr. McKinnon's panel confirmed, and we need to take decisive fiscal action. You can go back and see that following the introduction of our 2019 budget, there was a long list of financial institutions, economists, banks, and others who confirmed that this was a very credible plan to get Alberta back to balance in this term of government. And but I would point out to my friends in the NDP and government unions that we, on the one hand, a rating agency is saying that our plan for balance is insufficiently ambitious. And on the other hand, the NDP et al. Are saying that this is the sort of the end of the world. The truth is, it's neither. The truth is that it is a 2.8% reduction in program spending over 4 years, spread over 4 years, that credibly gets us to balance. it does require growth in the economy and increase in exports of our energy. And I think what you're alluding to is I saw some of the, I think, inaccurate view about Alberta's environmental performance emanating from some financial institutions through the ESG matrix included in their report. We have assembled a working group on ESG to bring together the most comprehensive, current, and objective data on the environmental improvement in Alberta's oil and gas sector. We'll be sharing that with Moody's, but with all financial institutions who are looking at the ESG question. We don't think that they are giving us fair credit for the enormous progress that's been made in reducing GHG emissions, for example, and the new technologies that will continue to do so. So those are facts that we'll certainly be sharing with them and other financial institutions in the weeks to come.
Do you have a follow-up, Kelly?
Is that ESG working group working out of the war room?
No, it's largely working out of the public service.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
The next question comes from Elaine Bazzetti. Your line is open.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Kenney. Je voudrais revenir sur le discours du trône. Vous avez dit tout à l'heure, bon, que vous étiez déçu, mais que vous ne vouliez pas aller exagérer votre réaction à ce discours du trône. Andrew Scheer, lui, est allé très loin, a dit que c'était une déception. Il est très, très fâché contre ce discours. Je voudrais savoir, selon vous, est-ce qu'il est allé trop loin, trop vite dans sa critique?
Non, il a une responsabilité à s'opposer le gouvernement comme chef de l'opposition à Ottawa. Mon responsabilité est d'obtenir le progrès concret pour l'Alberta. J'aurais préféré clairement une emphase sur la situation économique en Alberta dans le discours du trône. Je suis déçu que ce n'était pas là, mais cela étant dit, nous avons eu certaines ouvertures, y compris celle du sous-premier ministre Freeland la semaine dernière et du ministre des Finances Morneau en ce qui concerne le programme de stabilisation fiscale. Alors, pour moi, le truc important, c'est pas nécessairement les discours de trône, c'est l'action sur nos demandes d'équité, de justice dans la fédération. Et c'est sur ce point-là où je mettrai l'accent la semaine prochaine quand je suis à Ottawa.
Aline, do you have a follow-up?
En sous-question, on a vu que depuis l'élection, M. Doug Ford a, par exemple, beaucoup atténué son discours, M. Higgs aussi. Y a-t-il un risque pour l'Alberta, alors que vous continuez à être très, très structuré dans vos récriminations, y a-t-il un risque d'isoler l'Alberta?
Non, le contraire. Quand l'NPD était gouvernement ici, Alberta était isolée. Mais aujourd'hui, nous avons commencé cette semaine avec une expression de solidarité unanime de toutes les provinces et territoires, de tous les courants politiques et toutes les régions du pays pour certaines revendications importantes de l'Alberta, y compris une approche juste avec le programme de stabilisation fiscale, avec accès aux marchés internationaux pour notre énergie, pour une révision totale du projet de loi C-69 et sur les autres enjeux. Alors, je dirais que c'est le contraire d'isolation. Nous avons, plus que jamais dans notre histoire, établi un consensus pan-canadien, y compris le Québec, pour certaines des revendications importantes de l'Alberta.
We'll go back to the floor.
Premier, you mentioned meeting Jagmeet Singh, Justin Trudeau, Alberta's official opposition, but you didn't mention Andrew Scheer. Are you meeting?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. There's just an oversight. I'll be meeting Mr. Scheer privately, one-on-one, as well as his whole caucus. So I'll be meeting both the Leader of the Opposition and the Official Opposition Alberta Caucus, and that's one of the reasons we're bringing the Government Caucus Chair here is to co-chair that meeting.
Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire, après cette mission, qu'est-ce qui va vous faire dire mission accomplie? Vous avez une liste de demandes, elles ne se feront pas toutes en une semaine. Alors, après la mission, qu'est-ce que vous espérez comme résultat?
J'imagine qu'il y aura le follow-up, comment dit-on en français? Oui, oui. J'imagine qu'il y aura les suivis à continuer les discussions, mais écoutez, notre stratégie est de développer la force comme une province à défendre nos intérêts essentiels. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons fait un engagement pour avoir un référendum, par exemple, sur la question de péréquation dans la Constitution canadienne en 2021, si nous n'obtiendrons pas le progrès sur certaines de ces questions. Alors, je fais ces demandes urgentes auprès d'Ottawa, mais en même temps, il y a le panel pour un fair deal pour Alberta qui regarde les réformes plus fondamentales pour l'Alberta. So that's always out there as our more ambitious strategy. Boy, I'm doing a lot of French this morning for some reason.
Any other ones?
Okay, thank you very much, folks. Merry Christmas, and thanks for your good work. All the best.